Welcome to What the Horror, where I take your ridiculous ideas and let ChatGPT turn them into dumb horror stories. I don't read them until the camera is rolling, and then I score them based on how much they made me laugh. Our tale today is about a small-town serial killer who lures his victims into an alley and kills them by puking so hard that it tears their flesh off. This is the vomiter of Hallow's End. Hallow's End was the kind of small town where everyone knew everyone else's business, except when it came to the murders. By the time the fifth victim was found, people had stopped leaving their houses after dark. The bodies were unlike anything the coroner had seen. Skin stripped away in jagged ribbons, eyes melted, muscle fibers hanging like wet laundry. The police called him the Spewer. No one knew how he did it. All they knew was that every victim had been found in the same back alley between two abandoned buildings, the brick walls slick with a strange, sour-smelling residue. Emily Darren had grown up here, working part-time at the diner on Main Street. One of the victims, Maggie Sloan, had been her best friend since kindergarten. That was enough to turn Emily into an amateur detective. She kept a notebook in her purse full of interviews, street maps, and every newspaper clipping she could find. The details were always the same. The victims went missing at night. Hours later, they'd be discovered in the alley, their skin hanging in tatters, as if it had been blasted off. Some still have expressions of pure shock frozen on their exposed muscle. The police blamed acid, but Emily had seen the bodies. There were no burn patterns. It looked like the flesh had been torn away in wet chunks, the way vomit clings to your skin. Only here, it had removed it entirely. One night, Emily decided to watch the alley herself. She parked across the street in her old Corolla and sat for hours, chain smoking and sipping stale coffee. Midnight passed, then 1 a.m., then 2. Just as she was about to give up, a figure appeared at the far end of the alley. He was tall, hunched, his shoulders twitching like he was fighting an invisible weight. His head jerked from side to side as he moved. Emily froze. He stopped halfway down the alley and made a sound like a clogged drain. Trying to clear. Gross. It grew louder, wetter, then his whole body convulsed. The vomit came in a torrent, thick, yellow-green, streaming in the cold air. It slammed into the wall opposite him with such force the brick pitted. Emily gagged from across the street, the smell like rotting meat mixed with bile. A man entered the alley from the other end, drunk, stumbling, unaware. The figure spun on him. The sound returned, low and guttural. Then he spewed. Then the spew hit. Emily's eyes went wide as the vomit struck the man full in the chest, peeling the flesh from his torso like wallpaper. Chunks of skin flapped to the ground. His jaw dislocated as he screamed, teeth slipping free like loose pearls. Within seconds, he collapsed, a half skeleton in a puddle of acidic filth. Emily slapped a hand over her mouth, barely stopping herself from screaming. The killer stepped closer to the body, letting out a low sigh, almost content. Then he bent down and scooped a piece of the man's skin into his mouth. Ugh. She stumbled backward into her car, fumbling with the keys. The noise must have caught his attention because his head snapped towards her, bile dripping from his chin. His eyes were pure black. He grinned, and Emily could hear the gurgle starting in his chest. She peeled away from the curb, heart slamming in her throat. But even as she sped home, she knew the truth. She wasn't going to the police. They'd never believe it. She would have to find a way to kill him herself. The next night, she was back in the alley with a shotgun, a jug of bleach, and every ounce of courage she had left. But when the shadow appeared again, she realized too late he'd been waiting for her. The sound rose, louder than before. The first spray hit her arm, and her flesh dissolved in an instant. She screamed, firing blindly, the blast echoing through Hollow's End. But he kept coming. His mouth opened wider than any humans could, and the last thing Emily saw before the second wave hit was the smile, wide, black-eyed, and dripping. By morning, the alley held two bodies, one fresh, one decades old. The killer had The killer had disappeared, but the puddle of bile still steamed. Puddle of Bile, good band name. The puddle of bile still steamed, waiting for the next unlucky soul to pass by. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to comment your ridiculous ideas down below and we'll see how weird we can get. The Vomiter of Hollow's End, 5 out of 10. That was definitely the funniest one yet.